It's seems at first glance to be quite a short report, but when you see the appendices and the content within them, I think it might well be very much different from that. But I'd like, however, to welcome you all, particularly welcome other councillors who've joined us for part, at least, of the agenda. Any apologies, Brian, that we know of?
Yes, convener, we've got apologies from Councillor Black and Councillor Binney.
Splendid, thank you. Right, we'll just simply
put apologies in for Councillor Ritchie as well,
item.
Please. Did you get that?
The
Brian,
minutes of the last meeting, which
hello, John. Hello.
First,
I'm sorry.
Hello. I'm trying to put apologies in for Councillor Ritchie.
Right, thank you. Brian, I'm sorry. You've got to understand, folks, I'm working under a slight disadvantage. I thought it was an advantage, but it's a disadvantage of working from the council with Brian sitting at my right-hand side here. And the voice levels, certainly on my computer, are very low. Brian, can you do anything about that at all? Or I can just hear people and no more. Try that. Okay, thank you very much. Right, we'll pick up the traces again. I forgot the declarations of interest. So if anyone wishes to make a special declaration, please, this is now your chance. During which we'll go straight on to the minute. And it's as usual in these scrutiny committees, the minute is a rather lengthy one. And none the worse for that. It's very helpful to get that detail in the minute. And I would just ask anyone to make any comments regarding the minute. Anyone wish to raise anything under the minute? If not, I ask for your approval. And step straight on to agenda item 4, the rolling action log. Nothing very much to comment on the rolling action log. So, Brian, I think you had some comment to make regarding that.
Yes, convener, just simply to say that items 548 and 551 are actually the same item. For some reason, the system's put it in twice.
Getting it twice, okay.
So you will get a report to the next meeting on the debt process, but it's just the one report, and I'll take the action log up so that comes off. And the only I want to say is there is a report due back on the council's response to the pandemic, which has just been delayed because the people who are going to write the report are the people who are dealing with the pandemic, and obviously the second lockdown since the committee asked for the report. So that will be coming hopefully to the next meeting, but it is in play.
Anyone wish to raise anything under roll action log? If not, we go straight on to
Convener.
Sorry, yes.
Yeah, just in 508, the progress report in Slomanan Primary School and Early Learning class. Follow-up review was December 2020. Report was submitted. Any timescale on when this report will come to the committees?
That's David Mackay.
Can I ask for advice on that one? I don't know.
Yep.
That would be Mr. Mackay would be able to answer.
Thank you very much.
David.
Yep, thank you very much. The report will follow when we have the next HMIE follow-through inspection. Obviously, HMIE activity has been suspended at present and will hopefully resume in the new term from August 2021. So I anticipate that we'll get some notification thereafter on when they are likely to visit Slomanan, and then obviously following that visit we will then submit another report to this committee.
Thank you. Any idea when that will be?
Unfortunately, this time I have no idea, Councillor Patrick. HMIE obviously have now a significant backlog of activity, so we'll obviously be engaging with them as we do regularly, and hopefully get some clarification. And once I do that, I'll speak to Brian and we can update the rolling action log accordingly.
Thank you, David. Perhaps now go on to item 5, the corporate plan. And who's leading with that one, Brian? Stuart?
It's actually myself, convener, Karen Algie.
All right, Karen, thank you.
Thank you, Convener. Convener, this report sets out the work that we have been doing to progress the corporate plan actions and to deliver on the corporate plan priority of innovation. This is the third report that members of committee have received on the corporate plan, previously having considered the reports on enterprise and communities. And we aim to bring forward a report to the June meeting of this committee, giving an overarching annual review of our performance against the corporate plan as well. You'll see, and you made reference, Convener, at the start of the meeting, that this report is in a slightly different format for committee. Less text and more information within the appendices, and that is aimed at making it easier for committee to identify the key areas of work that are actually being done under this priority and the status of the progress of each of these areas of work. And we would look to use this type of format as we go forward for each of the corporate plan priority areas. Good progress is being made in most areas of work, which feed into our key actions for the corporate plan. And you'll see at Appendix 1 that we have set this out, and it shows that the progress is green against each of the areas of work. And that's green based on a RAG rate stating of red, amber, green. The report does note that we have around £800,000 of savings coming from these areas of work. And we are also in the process of reviewing the savings profiles for future years in line with the work that we're doing on the business plan. It's worth also highlighting that a number of the projects and areas of work for innovation are both deliver in terms of direct delivery, but are very much enabler projects which support other areas of work as well to deliver. So they will assist some other areas of work in terms of delivery of savings. Paragraph 3.3, you'll see the various Council of the Future projects which form part of this work on innovation. And these are monitored by officers through the Innovation Workstream Board. Two of these projects, the Digital Communities Project and the SPR project, are identified as priority projects for the Council, and these are also monitored by the Council of the Future Board. Further information on both of these is set out in Appendix 2 of the report. Given its significance, and whilst it's not a priority project, the HQ and Arts Centre work is also monitored by the Council of the Future Board, and we've provided some additional information on this at paragraph 4.2 of the report. Members may recall that a number of indicators were also agreed for each of the corporate plan priorities. And for the innovation priority, we have 6 indicators, which you will see at Appendix 3 of the report. 5 of these are in the top 8 in Scotland, so in the first quartile that we've got across Scotland. 1 is in the second quartile, which is sickness absence for all non-teaching employees. But certainly I think it's good news that we've got 5 within our top 8 in Scotland. The recommendations, Convener, are set out at section 2 of the report, and I'd be happy to take any questions on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you for that. It's as I said at the very start of the meeting, it's quite a busy appendices, and perhaps I can only ask that we take them appendix 1 at a time. So, Turn, if we may invite members to first of all direct their questions to the content within appendix 1. And Councillor Grant David.
Thank you, Convener. Before we go to, can I come back to page 17, Karen? 4.2, when we go on about the block 4 at Larbert, and then it gets down. However, discussions are still ongoing with various site owners to ascertain market value, but some owners have very high aspirations of the value of the sites. Is that talking about block 4 at Larbert? Do we not own block 4?
Convener, if it's okay with yourself, I'll let Douglas come in on that particular point.
Yes,
Okay.
Douglas.
Thanks, Karen, and through you, convener, just to say that this relates to the exercise to secure a site for the council headquarters and arts centre itself. So it's that work that's underway, and we're in discussions with landowners at the present time. The narrative there that suggests that they've got high aspirations, that's arising from the early part of the discussions. We are getting into a bit more detail with them now, and we hope to have a report to the council in May.
Thank you. Yes, David.
No, that's fine, Douglas. Thank you. It's just that
Oh.
it was linked. It was linked in there with block 4 at Larbert.
Right, right, David Balfour, please.
Yeah, okay. On page 22, at the top, there's a bit about further checks being undertaken to upgrade laptops. And it seems we've got some outdated operating systems. So I just wondered what operating systems are still out there on the network, how many there is or expected to be, and what's actually been done and timescales of this being resolved.
Stuart, can you take that one?
Convener, I would be happy to come in on that one if that's
Karen,
okay.
yes, thank you, thank you.
Happy to answer that. It's Windows 7 software, Councillor Balfour. So we have identified the laptops, we have corresponded with the users of those laptops, and we have laptops ready to be deployed. We are working with all of those users to get that done. So that's in hand and imminent to be resolved.
Okay, thanks for that.
Yes, Councillor Blackwood.
Thanks, Convener. The question in 4.2, the first bullet point, the naming competition for Block 4. Could I ask why we're going through this process of a naming competition for a building is to be used on a temporary basis?
Douglas, can you answer that one?
Yeah, convener, I'm happy to do that. Yeah, I mean, the decision of the council was that the solutions both at Block 4 and at the stadium are deemed interim, and we need to do further work to conclude on the council's eventual office requirement. But it is an important investment. We're investing around £1 million in upgrading that facility. It will serve us for a number of years, and is intended to signify a lot of the work that we're implementing through the council of the future. And for that reason, we want to make sure that it has got a proper presence for staff coming together when hopefully we emerge from lockdown. So for that reason, we thought it valuable to put a name to the premises. That may serve, as is noted, for an interim period, but whilst we're in there, it's important that it's made work and it has its own presence, as I say. The exercise is concluding. We've been in touch with group leaders recently just to feed back on the survey that's undertaken. We hope to have a name in the next few days and would look to announce that very soon.
Sorry, Convener, just an interim basis is how many years in?
That's subject to further work, councillor, that will need to be undertaken as we settle on the new HQ facility and we conclude on what our office requirements are going to be. Clearly, there's a lot of uncertainty about how our offices are going to be used in the future, given that large parts of our workforce are working from home and we expect we'll want to continue to work from home. But clearly, we do want to see the opportunity to bring people back into the office. We have set a standard of 0.6 for desk provision against the number of full-time equivalent staff. That we expect will reduce over the course of this work. And once we're settled on those numbers, we'll be able to determine those properties we no longer need and we can vacate from.
Thank you. Is that you finished, James?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Grant.
Just a quick one, convener, thanks. Was the name not mentioned, announced yesterday for Block 4?
may have been mentioned to you, we are just looking to conclude that with group leaders, David, so it's possible it's been shared with members more broadly. We are reaching a conclusion of that just to get final sign-off on it.
Okay, thanks, Douglas. I'll keep it a secret.
As I say, with group leaders who clearly have been sharing it with other members. That's great. That's good. I think we think that this is quite a positive exercise, and we're hopeful that we'll be able to announce that next week. So I won't divulge anything for now if you don't.
Sure.
Thanks, convener. Thanks, Douglas.
I trust that no members getting overly excited at the prospect. Anyone else wish to come in? Lorna, were you waving to me or what? No, thank you. We perhaps Appendix 2. Thank you very much. Karen, would you take perhaps questions on Appendix 2 if that's the right way to do it?
Happy to take any questions, convener.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Meiklejohn. Thank you. Cecil.
It was just a comment and maybe some clarification. Obviously, one of our amber indicators around sickness absence for employees, and it's just to just be clear that, about the time periods that this has taken place in, because our sickness absence is going to be out of kilter. Because of the situation we've had, and this is a very reflective look and only covers part of the pandemic. But I think we just need to be mindful that perhaps maybe when we see this next year, the performance indicators are going to be kind of skewed in many ways. But I don't know whether Karen would maybe want to make a comment on that in relation to the sickness absence.
Karen?
Yes, happy to, convener. I think the point that Councillor Meiklejohn makes is a very valid one, in the sense that we have obviously had a number of absences specifically as a result of COVID. Our statistics for what will be next year's local government benchmarking framework will show that our general absence has actually gone down, which is quite interesting. So non-COVID related absences are actually reducing. I think some of that, and we're seeing that happen across Scotland, so some of that is linked to people working from home, which for some people has been a positive and really helped with their health and well-being. We recognise that for others it may not have, but certainly for next year we will certainly see COVID-related absences in there, and there may well be a skew for next year. But I think that pattern will be replicated across Scotland when we see the results of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to ask a question? We've been introduced to a new form of grading, as far as I can see here, and my interpretation of the 3 orange bars means that we are kind of midstream and doing reasonably well. So I wonder if it's open to misunderstanding, but we're not doing so badly in comparison with the national figures. Alan, you want to come in?
Yeah, just a quick question, convener, for Karen, just on the back of what she was saying about next year's absence figures. With COVID in mind, will the figures be broken down to show the number of COVID absences? I mean, obviously, this is probably the first time that this is going to impact on the figures. So are we going to get a proper breakdown of the figures next year to show what the implications have been?
Karen?
Convener, happy to answer that. Yes, we do have a breakdown of COVID and non-COVID absences. So for next year's statistics, when we get to that stage, we can certainly do that. That's not an issue, Councillor Nimmo.
Okay, thanks, Karen. Thanks, convener.
Thank you. We now if we go into Appendix 3, can we invite questions, comments, anything on the content of Appendix 3? No, well, I was prepared to hear a number of questions there, and but thank you for that, and thanks for your comments, for your contribution, Karen. Anyone wish to comment before we pass on from this particular item? The one comment I was expecting to hear, and I'm quite pleased in a way that I haven't heard, is the fact that the actual content of the appendices are really so faint, so small that I think people have done extremely well to actually be able to interpret them. I for one had confessed to particular problems. Appendix 5, we've passed that, and if we duly noted Appendix 5 and go straight on to Appendix item 6. Stuart, yes, I think you would.
Yes, thank you, Convener. And if members thought there were a lot of pages on the last item, then there are certainly a lot of pages on this item, because we have a lot of indicators and a lot of important information to share with elected members. So members will be familiar now with the annual report that we bring to Scrutiny Committee, looking at the local government benchmarking indicators. I think the first thing to point out is that this covers performance through to the 31st of March 2020. So we're almost exactly a year out of date on this. Most of the local government benchmarking indicators have now been published, but there are a number which remain to be published, and they'll be published in due course by the Improvement Service. The information on our indicators is published on our own website and on my local council, and that's for public scrutiny, and the information is included in the members' portal, in my view. So what are we trying to show in this report? And I think it's important to say that we're using the same information in a number of different ways. So I think we're trying to do 4 things in this report. First thing we're trying to do is to tell members what has happened with their own performance between 2018-19 and 19-20. The second thing that we're trying to show members is where does our performance for 19-20 compare to the rest of Scotland. The third thing we're trying to show members is what are the things that we're good at, where are we in the services that we deliver for those that rank in the top quartile, and what are we not so good at, those service areas which rank in the bottom quartile. And from that, are there things that perhaps sit in the bottom quartile that members wish to hear some more information about, but members can ask for more information about anything, not just anything that sits in the bottom quartile. And the fourth thing that we're trying to show in this report is how the indicators tie into our corporate plan and our corporate plan priorities. So members agreed a suite of indicators in November at the executive, which we would use to help monitor the progress of achieving our corporate plan priorities of communities, enterprise and innovation. And what we're trying to do is take that 19-20 information and do those 4 things. So I'm going to go back to what's happened between the years 18-19 and 19-20, and that's set out in paragraph 4.3 for members. And that shows that 60% of our indicators have improved, about 36% have got worse, and 4% have stayed the same. But I think in broad terms, that's a very positive thing for us, that the majority of our indicators are heading in the right direction. and the granular detail of that is shown in the appendices. So I think we've maybe got something like 80 separate indicators. So they're set out in the appendices, so that's why the appendices are full and busy. So the next thing we want to do is look at how our performance in 1920 compared to the rest of Scotland. And again, I think it's pleasing to see that 70% of our indicators were better than the Scottish average, and about 29% fell below the Scottish average. And the table in 4.5 shows the percentage of our indicators that fell within each of the rankings. Section 4.7 and 4.8 then set out the things that we're good at, the things that we're in the top quartile for, and the things that we're not good at to appear in the bottom quartile. And the things that appear in the bottom quartile are things that members will be familiar with. They've been in the bottom quartile for some time. So finally, we look at our corporate plan, and we've got 24 indicators which have been matched against our 3 priorities, and I referenced the November executive previously. So in paragraph 4.9 of the report, we set about matching these indicators against the 3 priorities, and again identifying for members indicators which appear in the top quartile and those that appear in the bottom quartile. And again, I think that that shows a positive picture for the council. I think in concluding, convener, a few final thoughts. The local government benchmarking framework is the best that we have in comparing our performance against other councils. I think care needs to be taken in looking at the ranking of some indicators, because you tend to find that there are clusters of values around small numbers. So the sensitivity of some numbers can make quite large changes in terms of where you sit nationally. I think, again, sitting alongside that, looking at a single PI on its own is difficult to draw a complete picture of a service and about how it's performing. So we have a number of local performance indicators that we use beyond those that are in the local government benchmarking framework to help inform that wider picture. And some of these are included in that wider corporate plan that Karen referenced that we're going to bring back in June. So when we come back in June, we're going to have an update on where we are in delivering on our corporate plan priorities, picking up on the 3 reports that members have considered thus far. And as part of that, you'll get a report on, I think it's somewhere over 30 performance indicators that the executive agreed back in November of last year. So, convener, I'll just return to the recommendations, of which there are 3. The first one is asking members to note the improvement in the performance of the council in 1920. The second one is seeking members' views on any further indicators that you would like more information on. And the third one is just noting that there'll be this wrap-up report coming back to Scrutiny Committee in June on how we've performed on our corporate plan priorities. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that members have, along with colleagues from other services. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart. David, Councillor Grant. David?
Thank you, convener. I think this is a question for Patricia. Patricia, could we go to page 32? And it's the number of days people spend in hospital when they're ready to be discharged. I'm sure that your good self gave us a kind of brief on this previously, how we were improving on this. Could you help us out there?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm pleased to say, I mean, this data is 1920 data, and we successfully transferred some of our health services into the partnership about a year ago, and had started on our Home First initiative from about September in 2019. And I'm pleased to say that pre this lockdown, the first lockdown of COVID, we were already able to see the results of that integrated working across our system, and particularly supporting safe discharge from hospital. So the IGB regularly scrutinise performance. They receive regular performance reports, and we have a whole suite of indicators which include these ones, but much broader and more detailed indicators which give them the opportunity to dive a bit deeper into our performance. And I'm pleased to say that we've seen significant improvement in performance in relation to both of those indicators that are highlighted as being in the bottom quartile, around the days spent in hospital for people delayed in their discharge. So that went from over 1,000 days in December 2019 to just 417 in December 2020. Also, the readmission rate to hospital continues to be a challenge, but we've seen an improvement in that as well. And that's a reflection of working across the whole system. We've got a consultant geriatrician now working around frailty pathways, hospital at home, as well as our Home First and reablement initiative. So I hope in a year's time, when we're looking at this year's data, you'll see significant improvement in our position, not just in the local benchmarking framework, but also in the experience of people using our services. I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
It does, Patricia. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Patricia. Councillor Spears.
Thanks. It's also page 32 and the bottom ranking indicators. The three cost items, swimming pools, libraries, museums and galleries. Do you think we could have a further explanation, please?
Yes, Brian, can you take that?
Thanks, Convener. Maybe I should have said at the outset that the indicators relating to the trust get picked up in the trust performance report, which comes to the Scrutiny External Committee. So this isn't something that falls within the remit of this committee. So unfortunately, there's nobody from the trust here, but we wouldn't really be considering that today. When the trust do their performance report in October, we would pick up performance issues. And similarly for the IJB ones that Patricia was answering there, that gets picked up in reports that come to the Scrutiny External Committee. So really it's the ones which aren't trust and the ones which aren't IJB that the committee should focus on this morning.
Is that acceptable, Councillor Spears?
I'll certainly be asking more questions at the trust.
I'm sure you will.
Good.
Anyone else wish to make comment on? Yes. Councillor Blackwood, sorry, I forget. I can't see my screen too well.
It's in page 44. Percentage of council rent that was lost due to houses remaining empty seems to be an increase, and increasing over the last 3 years. It's not a huge amount. It's 1.31%, but it's still a loss to the council and rents. What's the reason there? Because we used to be quite good at turning around the empty houses.
I'm happy to pick that up, Convener. Members might recall that we introduced a new voids standard. So it's just the amount of time that it takes to do all the work that we have agreed that we're going to do between a house becoming vacant and being re-let. So, you know, we do a lot more work with our void houses before we let them than some councils. A year or so back, we increased the standard of the void let, so it just takes us a bit more time to do the work. And as a result of that, that means that we're just losing a bit more rent from that. Just prior to COVID, we had an internal group of officers looking at how we could smarten up that process, looking at whether we can do more pre-inspections, for example, before the property becomes void. So once we get out of COVID, then that's something that we would like to see an improvement on, both the void turnaround time and the rent that's lost from void properties.
Thank you,
Thank
Ian.
you. Okay. Can I ask that members indicate to me whether they wish to ask questions under Appendix 1? Because if so, I think perhaps it would be better to take them page by page so that we, would that be acceptable to you? Perhaps not then, but David, I hear your hand up. Thank you. David
Thanks,
Balfour.
Convener. Yeah, Appendix 1, page 44. The rent arrears, it says, have increased for 7.7 to 8.42%. I just wondered if we could get a wee bit more information on the reasons why that could be and what we can do to try and remedy that.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. I'll pick that up. Can I suggest that that will get picked up in the report that's going to come to members at the next meeting, just around debt recovery and write-offs, where I think that what Councillor Balfour has asked will be set out more fully than I could provide an answer to. But what I would say is that early engagement is the key to how we manage rents, and what we have again started to do just before COVID is get our housing officers trying to make early contact with our tenants to try and see if we can get them signed up to some kind of plan before arrears start to build up. Universal credit has an impact on this as well. But when we're looking at this in a year's time, we're going to see an increase again in rent arrears, and that's a result of COVID. You know, despite, you know, the efforts that we've got a hardship fund of £200,000 that we set aside for tenants as well. But despite that, and I think we set that out in the rent report that went to council in January, our rent arrears are rising, but so are everybody else's, you know, across the country.
Okay, thanks for that, Stuart.
Thank you. Sorry, I can't see who's waving to me. I do
Councillor Nico John.
apologise. What?
John.
Oh, sorry, Cecil, I do apologise, but because your window in the back and my screen, I couldn't see who was waving. Yeah. My apologies.
The sun's come out and I kind of fade into the darkness just with the light
You
in the
never
room.
do that.
Apologies. I've got a couple of questions, and I'll give them both together so that we can make the issues of time. One of them was, it seems a bit of a crude indicator, but the percentage of highest paid 5% employees who are women. And I just wondered what we were doing as an organisation to enable and empower women to be able to come through the ranks within the organisation, and to make our jobs attractive to women, and therefore the policies around that maybe create some of the barriers are being looked at to enable women to be able to compete on a more level playing field. And the other one is around our town centre vacancy rates. I don't know whether we have a particularly unusual situation where we have far more private owned properties within our town centre, and therefore as a council we have a difficulty to influence that, or whether it's just because of I'll take only Falkirk as an example. We have a number of large long-term properties that have been vacant that are no longer fit for purpose, and to see whether or not that there is something around that. And I know that there's work being done to address some of this, but just to maybe for clarity, so that we understand why we are lower performing in those particular areas. Thank you, Convener.
Thank you. I wonder, your first part of your first question, Karen, can you make any comment on that one, please?
Yes, happy to, Convener. Convener, I think we need to just look at what this particular indicator is assessing, and it is actually relating to a relatively small percentage of employees across the workforce. Our workforce in general, we have over 70% females within the workforce. So that almost outbalances some of what this indicator is telling us, but it clearly tells us that those females are not progressing through to the more senior roles. The senior roles, however, in that top 5%, we need to remember that even a small change to that will make a big difference. So, for example, in the last 3 years, we have lost 2 females from that particular group of 5% of females in senior roles, both replaced by males. So that has a big impact on those figures. But that's not to say that we should be complacent about it just simply because it's a small number. And there are many things that we can do to try and ensure that we encourage females to work their way through the different grades and progress into the more senior roles. And some of that is related to our flexible working arrangements, making sure that females with caring responsibilities, whether that be children or for older people, have appropriate support and flexibility in place to do that and still have a full-time lengthy job, which often will take them, 37 hours, but will often at a senior level will take you beyond that 37 hours. But it's making sure we've got the flexibility in place to ensure that individuals can manage the work and the life balances that they need to manage appropriately. I think some of the home working arrangements that we've had in place recently has in some ways helped with that particular situation because it's enabled better work-life balance of managing different priorities, but equally some of it will have hindered. So, for example, while we've had schools closed, some females with childcare responsibilities, that will have made it very difficult. But there's no single answer to this. I think it's about trying to make sure that our policies and our procedures from an HR perspective in terms of the flexible working, mobile working, making sure that individuals can manage their priorities and also offering a variety of different contract types that will suit the individual circumstances, that we take all of those into account. And we've been looking at some of this within our Equality Impact Assessment report that we're just about to publish. In fact, I think it's live on the website today. So some of that will be in our actions that we need to take forward. And I hope that helps answer that question.
Thank you. Second part of that question, Stuart, can you come in here at all?
I think it might perhaps be Douglas, convener.
Sorry. Douglas.
Happy to pick that one up, convener, or probably not happy because clearly the town centre vacancy situation is concerning, and obviously the data presented is from more than a year past, and we would expect that the town centre vacancy rates in fact will have increased as a consequence of the pandemic. We know that there is quite a substantial amount of floor space now vacant in the town centre. British Home Stores, clearly a prominent one. Marks and Spencer's was a big announcement in 2019 that caused significant increase in the vacancy for the floor space, and so we are alert to the concerns and need to do something. We don't own a lot of property in the town centre. That the large part of the town centre retail properties are in private sector ownership. We have the town centre action plan that is working through the intention to repurpose the town centre and introduce new uses. So we are gradually seeing some introduction of, for instance, housing as the prospect for reuse of town centre accommodation. There have been some new moves coming forward, some ventures that private developers have commenced to repurpose town centre premises to introduce these new uses. And clearly the decision that the council takes over its headquarters and arts centre project will very much be instrumental in helping to introduce that change of purpose, would probably involve some removal of retail floor space and introducing that as a principal new use and help to activate more measures that will enhance the prospects for let of premises in the town centre. But I would expect that the next round of figures are probably going to show some increase in the extent of vacancies, and it is certainly something we're actively trying to deal with through our action plan.
Thank you. David Balfour.
Thanks, Convener. Just going back to Karen there, in the more senior roles, is there the option for like reduced hours or job share to help people that may have sort of caring duties or whatever?
Convener, happy to answer that. Yes, those options are available to all employees. Clearly, the more senior the role, the more difficult that can be, but it can still work. So we don't have as many of those job share or part-time roles at a senior level, but the option is still available.
Okay, thanks.
Can I ask the question? It's appendix, it's on page 39, and I'm not sure whether perhaps it would be appropriate for Patricia to comment. It's the question which has been before us for years now about the delays, discharges, etc. I wonder if the care service about delayed discharges being higher than the Scottish rate. I know we have problems in Falkirk, but it would be worthwhile hearing up-to-date comment. Patricia, would you be able to take that, or would someone else wish to?
I can come in and take that. As with our other indicators, our delays in discharge has shown quite significant improvement. Some of the work that we've been doing most recently has had an impact on that. We've extended intermediate care facilities, and that's a facility where people can be transferred from hospital and have the benefit of quite intensive reablement from physiotherapy and occupational therapy staff, as well as our care staff. So we've extended the number of beds in Summerford, and we've also extended into Thornton Gardens and have additional reablement beds in there. We've also recently commissioned an additional care home, Caledonia Court. So we commissioned 18 beds there, 15 for reablement of the elderly and 3 for support with adults with mental health or cognitive impairment. So that has dramatically improved in people's journey and support out of hospital, and that's had an impact on our delays in discharge. We do have a particular challenge around adults with incapacity, and our numbers in that area have been quite high. They're not included in the standard delays figures, but they are included in the total delays. So if an adult does not have guardianship, then they have to remain in a hospital setting until satisfactory guardianship arrangements can be arranged through their own solicitors and family. So that's an area where we have quite a challenge in terms of our impact in trying to reduce those lengths of stay and those lengths of delays. But I'm happy to report that we have made some inroads into that, but it is an ongoing challenge. But we have seen an improvement in the delays in discharge, again, as a result of that integrated working. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. That's appreciated. Anyone else? David, Councillor Grant.
Thank you, Convener. Could I go back to page 41, please? And it's to do with the household waste or refuge collection. It's the only one in the page that's got a red indicator, and it's the number of adults satisfied with refuge collection. I understand it's 1920. We are sitting in 62.23. Scotland 74.30, so 62% satisfied, but obviously there's a lot of people not satisfied. Do we have a pattern why they're not satisfied? Is it the same thing, or is it different things what they're not satisfied with?
Convener,
Can someone take that up for me, please?
Convener, I'll take
Yes.
that one.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So this is an indicator that shows quite considerable variation in when it's reported year on year, and it relates to the Scottish Household Survey that's undertaken annually. It's quite a small sample survey. There's about 250 responses from within the Falkirk area, so it tends to be quite patchy, and therefore, not sufficiently robust, we feel, for reporting on. Obviously, our service is very acutely aware of concerns over the operation of waste services. It's been through quite considerable turmoil as arising from the lockdown. But our council was amongst the first to get full services back up and running following the lockdown, and we've sustained that level of service through the period of lockdown. We do get periodic complaints. There's always concerns about missed bins and these kinds of things that arise. But the service does attend to any complaints that come forward very promptly and tries to make sure that there's a level of satisfaction is improving despite the circumstances we're working in.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wish to raise the questions under the agenda item? If not, I would refer you to the recommendations as detailed by Stuart under 2.1 to approve report and acknowledge progress. It's worthwhile being given the opportunity to acknowledge that indeed progress has and is continuing to be made. And to note that we will get our further reports in June. Thank you for that. Before we, I was going to suggest that, in fact, that we have a short break at that point before we go on to the next item, which gives me the opportunity to repair an omission from the very start. And you'll probably notice a strange person in our group. I'm delighted to welcome Sophie Dick here joining us to keep us right, our graduate. And yes, give us a big wave, please, Sophie. We look forward very much to the support that we perhaps have not overburdened you at this stage for the simple reason it's only your second day with us, but you're most welcome to Falkirk Council, and we look forward to seeing your cheery face in all our future committee meetings, etc., and to get all the support that you'll be giving us. Brian, can we recommend that we have a short 10-minute break at that particular point?
Yes, convener. This is the point in the meeting when we've finished the performance scrutiny. So this is a chance for those members who are not members of the committee to leave the meeting. They can, of course, if they want to watch the proceedings, join through the live stream. But the last item on the Pupil Equity Fund is for the committee members only. And maybe this time also thank Stuart Irwin, because obviously he was the graduate who supported Scrutiny Committee prior to Sophie coming on, so he moved on to greater things, as we'll hear in the next report. So we take a 10-minute break and come back at 11:05.
Right, thank you very much. Okay, we'll do that. Yes, hello. I think, are we all here? Yes, I think it's necessary. We'll just start on agenda item 7, the report on the Pupil Equity Fund. Brian, could you talk us into the report, please?
Certainly, convener. Thank you. This is a report, as it says, it's a report on the Pupil Equity Fund review carried out with the Scrutiny panel last year. The report presents the findings of the panel and sets out in the main report the background to the work of the panel, how many times it met, who the panel were, and then appends the actual report, which the panel drew up towards the end of last year. I think the report came to the last Scrutiny committee, but for various reasons the committee weren't able to consider it. So today members are asked to consider the findings. I think generally the finding was that the panel was satisfied with the procedures which were put in place by Children's Services to oversee the disbursement of the Pupil Equity Fund. And One of the outcomes though was that they asked for an update report late in 2022 on the arrangements, because obviously because of COVID last year that everything was maybe slightly up in the air. So they've asked for a further report next year, and asked that also considers the outcomes of the pupil equity fund and actually closing the attainment gap. This review was about the funding that came to schools and how that was managed. It wasn't about the success or otherwise of pupil equity funding itself. So maybe it's important just to stress to members that that was the case. It was about the management arrangements and the monitoring arrangements that were put in place. I don't know if maybe David wants to add something to the summary before we go to the convener.
No, thank you very much, Brian, and thank you, convener. Really just absolutely to say that I found the process really supportive in terms of the committee's engagement with myself, in terms of actually the questions that have been asked were allowing us to reflect on the work that we had done as a service as well. And obviously I was pleased in terms of the report content of the findings of the committee in relation to the structures and supports that we had in place, because ultimately what we want to make sure is that any funding that comes to Falkirk Council is appropriately managed and has appropriate oversight without being overly bureaucratic for the particular function that it serves. And obviously the challenge with Pupil Equity Fund is that the funding came directly to schools, which is an unusual situation and not normal for funding that comes to local authorities. So we all had to go on a journey to learn from that, from both a school's point of view and obviously from a central officer's point of view as well. And I think collectively we worked through a process and a system that we feel has provided some rigour and robustness to the decision making taken locally, but equally allows the school's head teacher and leadership teams to have a reassurance that the decisions that they were taking locally to spend this money and invest it in our children's future was appropriately overseen, and they obviously got appropriate tracking and monitoring measures in place. And again, as the report says, that we're more than happy to bring a report back later next year in terms of an update on where we are with PEF, and then have some more information regarding attainment and outcomes for our children and young people.
Yeah, thank you for that, David. I was particularly interested in the report. I found it very informative indeed. And perhaps we invite Councillor Flynn to. Jim, could you speak to the report?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Thank you, John. Yeah, I would agree with what David said. I think the fact that it was over quite a longer duration than perhaps it would have been without the COVID gave us an opportunity to go a bit deeper and learn. There was an insight. I felt the three of us, the three councillors, we saw a greater insight into what's really going on behind the scenes. And when you think that it's a considerable amount of money, I forget exactly, but it's somewhere 3.6 million-ish every year. So it's important just to have seen that that was being managed and looked after properly, and that head teachers were being supported. Particularly from my own viewpoint, and I'm sure the other councillors might well agree, was the fact that we saw some good examples, you know, of where it was being used, particularly the likes of the family liaison officers. It was a good insight, and I think that was really valuable, because being at a slight distance from what's happening with the money going to the head teachers, and then that sort of gap saying, well, what is happening? I think these case studies were really important. The one comment generally that we came back with was that because it's all related to eligibility through the free school meal service, that was important, you know, for children's services and the schools and head teachers to ensure, if you like, the promotion or advertising of the free school meals, to increase that, you know, qualification to get free school meals, which would increase the PEF funding for the future year. And the timing of that was probably particularly relative. But no, it was a positive experience, certainly from my experience. And I think the outcome was very reassuring indeed, actually. And certainly I look forward to seeing the report at the end of the next 21-22 period. So just really, if there's any questions from anyone, that's it. But one final point I would make, there was excellent support, obviously, from David and Children's Services, but equally so from Stuart Irwin. Stuart was moving between job positions at the time this report was being compiled, and I think he put in a lot of, he didn't get paid overtime, but a lot of hard work and overtime to get that report. So thank you, Stuart. Thank you, convener.
Thank you very much for that, Jim. It's an opportunity to acknowledge Stuart. Nice to see you there, looking bright and cheerful. They've been kind to you wherever wherever you found out. Nice to see you again. And Jim, Jim, you played a good part in this, I know, report. Could I hear from you?
Yeah, just very quickly, convener, thanks. I've been on a number of panels, and this is probably the easiest one I've ever been on. And I think the examples given gave us a flavour of how the money was being spent and what was taking place within the education department, and it's certainly favourable now. I look forward to a further report coming next year on the whole aspect of it.
Thank you very much. I'm appreciative of the work that goes into these panels, and as I say, the report was certainly very informative, which I appreciate. Does anyone wish to comment or say anything more? David Grant.
Thank you, convener. I'd like to echo my sentiments to the board as well, yourself included, David. It was very easy reading. I enjoyed reading. It was very thorough and very good. Looking forward, I would just like to ask a question. I understand that we are live. If maybe somebody, the family liaison officers, which intrigued me, bringing in, can they not talk to teachers, or what was the idea on the family liaison officers? If somebody could maybe enlighten me.
Yep. Convener, I can come in. Yep, absolutely. Yeah, thanks very much, Councillor Grant. Yeah, I think basically each school was looking at kind of some of the challenges they had, and some of the difficulties were around attendance for our children and young people. And while school staff contact families regularly to seek to engage with them and seek to promote and encourage the building of relationships, what we have found is that sometimes another role, and in the case of a family liaison officer, they're coming at it from a less school-focused point of view in terms of the relationship, and in terms of breaking down those barriers. Those have been really kind of key in terms of building up the relationships with those families to understand what are the challenges that they're facing in relation to the potential barriers that may be preventing the children either arriving in school in time or not arriving at all. And quite frequently what they find is that there is an initial hiccup in the morning, and rather than coming to school later, families feel under pressure, so they just don't come at all. So again, building that relationship, they can say, it's okay, these things happen. Families have but blips in the day. You might be running a little bit late. We would like to see you, if it's 5 minutes late, 20 minutes late, an hour or 2 hours, please come. So they support the families to understand that that's a possible route forward. They also support the families in terms of actually organisation and listening to the kind of challenges that they've got, because sometimes it's about organisation, but sometimes it's just about other things in a family's life that again is probably more difficult to share with a class teacher or senior leadership team within a school. But again, through time you build the trust up with the family liaison officers, and that then allows those situations to be more fully supported at a lower level of intervention rather than it being escalated up to being a major crisis for the family.
Thank you for that, David.
Thanks, David.
It's encouraging to hear that no longer do teachers lock behind doors to try and catch the 5 minutes late arrival. But there again, as my hairstyle shows, I'm talking about another generation. Anyone else wish to make comment? Yes, David Balfour. Sorry, there's so many Davids
Thanks,
today.
Convener.
I'm very pleased with it.
Yeah, just
Please go on. David, I think
You're on mute, Councillor
you're
Balfour.
on mute, I think.
all right, that's it.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
over the last number of years, I've been speaking to head teachers about the pupil equity fund, and they were very positive about it just when it first came in, and from then, and had different ideas of what they were going to do, etc., etc. And they give them a different range of things they could do to try and help different pupils or as many pupils as possible, sort of thing over the school. So I think just the report here is a very, very good report. There's some fantastic examples in there, and it's been a very, very positive step forward, I think, with PEF. So long may it continue.
Thank you, David. I think we're all looking forward very much to the, as recommended, that we have a further update report. Perhaps
Councillor Patrick, I have a quick question.
Yes, of course.
Just back to Jim saying about encouraging the people to take up the free meal option. David, the primary 1 to 3 all qualify for free school meals, and there's a big uptake. Is there still a stigma about people qualifying for free school because of their parents' income and they're reluctant to take it up? Is that the reason behind it? Or I know we've tried to disguise it. I don't know if disguise is the right word, but you know, people could get free school meals. Nobody else in the school knew about it.
Yep.
So why are we not taking up the opportunity, the option?
Yep, it's a very good question, Councillor Blackwood. I mean, I think there's possibly a small proportion along those lines. I think probably the largest proportion is the fact that we're giving free school meals to primary 1s to 3s. Families don't think they need to apply for free school meals because they're getting free school meals. But what we're saying is it just as a way of capturing that data in terms of in the system, because you're then entitled to other opportunities that may come along in terms of further grants and monies and supports that you can have. So again, we annually have a campaign to encourage both the free school meal application and clothing grant applications, really just to make sure that people understand it's just part of the course, they're entitled to it, they should be claiming it if they can, and really try, as you said, to destigmatise it. I don't think there is the stigma there because, again, the lunches within schools, we're looking to ensure that schools have got systems and processes in place where the fact that a young person or a child has got a free school meal entitlement, no one knows. Particularly now with the kind of online payment system, their account just automatically gets accredited with the relevant monies, and they can access the meals accordingly. So I do think we've managed to destigmatise much of that, but again, it's probably back to the misconception because they get it, they just assume that somehow the system knows they're entitled to it. And particularly what we're doing is just making sure that that's encouraged to, review and apply where appropriate, so that they then obviously are captured in our system accordingly.
Thank you, David.
Thank you. Any other questions, contributions? If not, we return to the recommendations, and the main recommendation is to give us the opportunity to update the report late 2022. And I think it will be very interesting there to see the progress, because as Councillor Balfour said, the examples in the report are exciting, show exciting work that's being done, and I'm quite sure that there'll be a great deal more of that to be told and learned by the time we get to our next report. And with that, I think we'll bring this meeting to an end, and thank you all for your attendance.